Are you a caregiver to someone that has dementia and find yourself struggling to have a meaningful conversation or even just a calm one? And are you interested in making sure that you lower your likelihood of getting into a big fight or agitating your loved one? In this video, I'm going to give you my top 5 best tips on communicating with your loved one that has dementia. And this will serve as a foundation for all conversations that you have with your loved one. Anything from everyday, mundane, basic questions all the way up to meaningful reminiscence type questions. This way you'll be able to have more peace in your home and less strife, which I think is something we could all use. Welcome to the Dementia Success Path YouTube channel. I'm Krista, and this is the place where we find tips, strategies, and get support so that we can find success on our path as caregivers. Tip number 1 is using as few words as possible. When you're someone with dementia, what a lot of complicated words are going to do is confuse you and make you very upset. That's been my experience, at least. So an example of what this looks like when someone gets upset when someone else uses way too many words is something my mentor told me several years back, one of her encounters. She was helping this French lady who had dementia, and she was very proud and proper. And every day, my mentor would come up to her and ask her, "How do you like your coffee? Sugar, half and half?" She would give all these various options, and she could see that every day this lady was getting more and more upset with her until finally one day it hit a boiling point and this lady ended up just chucking the coffee at her. Now, my mentor was very confused as to why this lady did this, and she ended up reading up on what would cause some dementia patients to get agitated, and she learned that when you use way too many words, they tend to get very frustrated. So what she ended up doing was coming up to her the next day and asking, "Coffee?" And that day, that lady smiled and took the coffee, and they didn't have any problems again when it came to her getting agitated about her using too many words. So when you're talking with your loved one, if it's possible to use less words in explaining something or talking to them or asking them a question, that is what you're going to want to do. Tip number 2 is make sure that your dementia person can actually hear you. I think we all know that a lot of older people have difficulty hearing, so when we're talking with them, sometimes what will get them upset is that maybe you're talking away from their ear, or you are talking in way too high-pitched of a voice for them to understand, because as you get older, it's harder for them to hear higher-pitched voices. And what ends up happening is that they will get upset with you the more they have to try and strain in order to hear you. I've had this happen a lot in the age of pandemic, wearing all this PPE on, and a lot of them get very upset with me because they can't understand what I'm saying. So if you want to avoid a lot of fights in communicating with your loved one, coming in to close to their ear and making sure that they understand what you're saying and that they can hear you is going to make a world of a difference. Tip number 3 is nonverbal communication. Now, nonverbal communication means your facial expressions, your tone of voice, and your body language. So all the things you're saying without words. Especially as the disease goes on later, it's very common for a lot of dementia folks to rely on these nonverbal cues in order to understand the world around them and understand what the people in their lives are trying to tell them. So making sure that your facial expression matches what you're saying, having non-threatening body language, and also being able to use a tone of voice that matches what you're trying to do is going to help your dementia person not get agitated when you try to talk to them or try to communicate. Tip number 4 is letting go of things that don't affect health and safety. Now, of course, we know that if your loved one is going to walk in the middle of traffic, or if they're going to do something that is going to make them fall or is going to make them sick, then obviously you have to intervene and accept the consequences of them getting agitated with you, that you stop them from doing what it is they wanted to do. But when it comes to everything else that don't involve their immediate health and safety, just let it go. If your mom wants to wear 2 sweaters, then let her wear 2 sweaters. Or if your loved one is trying to make a collection of all the knickknacks around the house and pile it up on the table, let him. Because at some point, your peace and sanity is worth more than having absolutely everything in order and correcting them every 5 seconds about stuff. Tip number 5 is letting your loved one have some choices. Now, especially if the disease is a little further progressed, those choices are going to become simpler and simpler over time. But you'd be surprised how far into a disease you can ask your loved one simple questions. A good example of this will be in some of the music groups I do, and asking my folks in my groups, would you like relaxing music or music to wake you up? And most of the time they appreciate having that choice there, because as the disease progresses, they're going to be able to be in charge of less and less in their life. And there's a lot of agitation and sadness and feelings that come with the loss of control, or the loss of them being able to call the shots in their own life. So giving them as many opportunities to call the shots in their own life is going to mean less freakouts and more quiet and calm in your home. With these 5 foundational tips, you're going to be able to talk to your loved one in just about any circumstance, whether it's something really basic that you have to communicate to them or something a little bit more meaningful. If you liked this video, be sure to tap the like button and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought, or if you're going to use any of these tips. Or if you have seen any of these tips before, let me know how they worked for you. Subscribe also if you want to see more of my content, and I hope to see you in the next one.